Hey everybody, welcome back. If you're new here, hi, I'm Mercury. So today, home vlog, let's chat. And let's chat about Star Trek. I want to geek out today. I want to really geek out and go down the Star Trek fandom kind of dialogue of like stuff that's on my mind. And this is sort of coming from Section 31 came out on Paramount Plus, and I have thoughts, I have feelings, I have reactions. I'm gonna try to keep it spoiler free in case you have not gotten around to seeing Section 31 yet. But I want to talk about it more like in the continuum of Star Trek, where we are now, where the franchise is, and what I'd like to see from it, and where I'd like to see it go in the future. So let's get into it. So if you're not familiar, just a little backstory into the Star Trek universe. Section 31 appeared throughout different Star Trek series. It showed up in Deep Space Nine when they tried to recruit the Doctor, Dr. Bashir. It showed up in Enterprise. They tried to recruit Malcolm. It's popped up in different iterations. And then they picked up on it again in the current Star Treks, like Star Trek Discovery, where it's like come full circle and it's back. Now, Section 31 is supposed to be like the covert, sneaky, like they can't do what the Federation does because the Federation can't get their hands dirty. So they're part of Starfleet, but they're the part of Starfleet nobody talks about and they kind of like turned a blind eye to. They're like the muddy gray waters of Starfleet. It's sort of the best way to describe it. Now, we have a Section 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh. Amazing. She is so amazing. She's a powerhouse in this. There's another backstory element of Star Trek that you need to be familiar with to understand where the Section 31 movie is sort of taking place. And that is the Mirror Universe. Mirror Universe starts out like in original Star Trek, back in the Kirk and Spock days with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. So Mirror Universe back then, it was like when you saw Spock with the goatee and he was like evil Spock. That's Mirror Universe. It's an alternate universe, a parallel universe, where the good guys are not always the good guys and the bad guys are not always the bad guys and things get a little bit wonky. That's the Mirror Universe. And in the Mirror Universe, there's what's called the Terran Empire, and they are large and in charge over there. So the movie that just came out, Section 31, has Michelle Yeoh in it, and she plays Philippa Georgiou, and the character originates from the Mirror Universe and has crossed over into like the Federation universe that we know. Now, she knows where she's from, she knows where she is, like there's no question about that. But there's sort of this like crossover of, you know, things from her past and things from the present, and that's sort of like the premise of the plot of the movie. That being said, my opinion on the movie that just came out, outside of the Star Trek universe, it's a great movie. It is a great action adventure sci-fi, you know, type of a movie. But it uses themes and it uses tropes that have already been done over and over and over and over again. Not the opening sequence, but the beginning section of the movie, to me, had very strong influences from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, like the scene with the lounge singer and the diamond, and they're kicking it all over the place. Like, somebody who made this movie loved Indiana Jones. It is such a strong influence in a whole large section of the movie. The other thing with this is there was no stealth or sneaky or covertness to anything Section 31 was doing. They were just like, no, we're going on mission. We got to get this done. We're doing it. And we're going to do it our way. Which again, outside the Star Trek universe, makes for a great movie. But within the Star Trek universe, it's already been established that Section 31, they function because they are covert. They function because they are flying under the radar. And this movie did not pull on that aspect whatsoever. So there were these deviations from Trek canon. The other part of it, like I said, it's a great action adventure movie. But classic Star Trek was never about that. So that brings us to this sort of like dichotomy of where we are right now with Star Trek. There's what I'm going to refer to as jumpsuit Trek, meaning anything from like Star Trek Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, Next Generation, original Star Trek. That's what I'm going to refer to as jumpsuit Star Trek. And I'm referring to their uniforms. Their uniforms in all of those series typically or often were jumpsuits. Then there's modern Trek, which is basically any Trek that has been relaunched since Paramount Plus took over. I feel very split on this. I still enjoy the new Star Trek. I don't want to get my wires crossed and make it seem that I don't. But I have to watch it with the understanding that it is different. It is not the Trek of yesteryear. There is something more cerebral about jumpsuit Trek. It was more thought generative, right? It made you think. It made you question. It paralleled social constructs. It paralleled things that society was trying to answer questions about, and did so using science fiction to come to those answers. Modern Star Trek, although in some ways it does a little bit, I'd say Discovery of modern Star Trek is the most that does that. But even then, it's still very action adventure driven, right? So even the movies, I want to say ever since J.J. Abrams took over Star Trek and made the Star Trek movies with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, those movies were the shift in Star Trek. Those movies changed how jumpsuit Star Trek functioned and the formula that went with the early Star Trek shows, and made it something new. Now, this is where I get sort of like hung up. And it's sort of Disney mentality. You have to always change and evolve in order to keep it going. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's going to get stale. It's going to get boring. It's not going to work at a certain point. There has to be change. There has to be forward motion. That has to exist. And I understand that. And I understand that that leads to choices that were made and the direction that new Star Trek has gone. All of that said, I also understand that I would rather get action-adventure Star Trek than get no Star Trek. And if action-adventure Star Trek is what's needed to draw in new audiences at this moment in time, I'm okay with that, with the caveat, I want it to be leading back to some of those core Gene Roddenberry values, those core things that really made Star Trek and differentiated it and made it unique and special. I don't want Star Trek just to evolve into an alternate to Star Wars. I don't want it to just be this competition sci-fi of like who can have the biggest boom in the movie. I want the thought, I want the cerebral to come back to it. I want it to make us think again. I want there to be more than surface level action adventure. I want there to be deeper stories. I want there to be interesting like things like some of the greatest characters came out of those sort of like thought experiments of like we're in a spaceship in the future, like what would this look like? You know, like Q is a great thought experiment. What would happen if there was a Q in the universe? And if you're not familiar with the character of Q is a species who are omnipotent. They know everything. They can do anything they want at the snap of a finger, the blink of an eye, whatever. But that's a great thought experiment. What would that look like if they existed in the universe? And how would a human being or other alien species that doesn't have those type of powers react and interact with them? What would that look like and what would that mean? These type of like thought experiments of like having the freedom of saying, well, what if this or what if that? What would that look like? Really, really cool. And I don't feel like Star Trek in the modern era is pushing that envelope as much. I feel like modern Star Trek is going for the surface level entertainment value, which there's nothing wrong with, but I want it to redirect itself back to really pushing that envelope a little further. I would love to see that. I would love to see things that parallel the jumpsuit era of Trek and really opening up to learn more. Like, there's so much you could do with the characters that and the species and there's so much. It's such a rich universe. You know, like Ferengis would be jealous, right? But it's true. There's so much in there. There's so much we have not yet seen, explored, and touched on. And I want more of it. And yeah, there's nostalgia factor, and that's why we keep getting things like we got Picard, which for fans, the nostalgia factor, super high. For anyone just kind of jumping on, you had the action adventure, so it's sort of like this balancing point in things, which I thought worked really well because they pulled on that nostalgia factor to ground it in what it used to be. And I love that. Where are we going? What else is in the pipe? I don't know. But I do know what I hope for and I wish to see. So, coming from a Star Trek fan, if it has any weight for the future of Trek, if anyone who is working on Trek would like to engage me in a thought experiment of like what should Star Trek look like in the future, I would love to have that conversation. But yeah, this is where we are. So, two genres of Trek. We have old Trek and new Trek, both good in totally different ways. So that's where I stand on the subject. So, let me know. What did you think about Section 31? What do you think of old school Trek, like jumpsuit Trek, versus modern day Trek? What are your thoughts on this? Because I know that, like, in the Star Trek community, this is a hot button issue and might even be a hot take. I don't know. But I'm curious. What do you think about Star Trek? What do you think about Star Trek of yesteryear? What was your favorite series of Star Trek? I find that a really hard question to answer because I love them all. I will watch Next Gen the most, but DS9, special place in my heart. And they're all so good. There's not a Star Trek I don't like, but if I had to pick one just based on the frequency of how many times I've seen the episodes, it's gotta be Next Gen for me. But DS9 is hot on its heels. So I guess with that, I'm done for the day. I'll see you all real soon. And until then, stay inspired by everyone. Take care.